Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I've been trying to make this video for a while now. I picked up reading last year and I read, I want to say 15 books, and I started watching booktube channels and following bookstagrammers, and I was like, I really want to make a video. And I've been saying this since probably last year, August. Also, apologies if I keep not looking at the camera. I've never recorded on my phone before. I have only ever recorded with a webcam, so this is new. I'm finally doing my first ever reading wrap-up, and for this video I will be wrapping up the 4 books that I read in the month of September. First of all, that is actually a record for me. I'm a busy person. I'm an engineer for my full-time job. I have other hobbies besides reading, and on top of that, I read kind of slow. So 4 books in 1 month is kind of insane, and I was like, what better month to do a reading wrap-up? So, jumping into it. First book I read this month, gonna be controversial. People don't like CoHo. I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. So, It Ends With Us. The genre is romance, I guess. It's kind of difficult to say it's romance because some things happen. The book length is 367 pages. It is single point of view. I believe it is in first person. Yes, it is in first person. My rating for this book was 5 stars. My spice rating was 3 peppers. So I have this cool, I'm not on BookTok, I'm not on TikTok, I don't even own TikTok, but I really liked the format of this journal. You can do your title, the author, picture of the book, like facts about the book, your review/notes, your star and spice rating, and then any quotes you like from the book. So I guess a little bit about my star and spice system. I am not overly critical of the literary aspects of books. I'm more trying to have a good time. So if the vibes are really great and I loved it, 5 stars. 4 stars if something was kind of missing for me, or like, say for like mystery and thrillers, if I thought it was too predictable, I won't give it 5 stars, I'll only give it 4. 3 stars, it was lacking. That is as far as I've gone so far. I haven't actually given anything 2 or 1 star. Yeah, we'll see. And then spice rating is sexual content for me. So 1 pepper is romantic descriptions like kissing and hugging and like boyfriend girlfriend, but no explicit sex scenes. 2 spice, and 1 spice is like fades black. 2 spice is at least 1 open door sex scene. 3 is like 2 or more. 4 is like, whoa, we're like starting to stray from the plot here. Like I gave Iron Flame and A Court of Silver Flames 4 spice peppers for a spice rating. And then 5 spice I have not encountered because that's like, there's no plot, it's all smut. So I haven't read anything like that because I'm not particularly interested in that. But yeah, so I gave It Ends With Us 3 peppers for the spice rating. So the plot of It Ends With Us. I'm going to try my best not to spoil anything, but be warned, there could be a spoiler on accident. But going into the plot. So our main character, Lily Bloom, is a pretty successful woman living in Boston. I believe she's either 23 or 24. And I think she's working for a marketing firm, but her dream job is to open her own plant shop, which is ironic because her full name is Lily Blossom Bloom. We start the book off with Lily on the rooftop of a Boston apartment building, kind of reminiscing and thinking on life. Her father has just passed away, and she really didn't like her father. He was abusive towards her mother, and Lily just doesn't have any good memories of him, and she kind of botched her eulogy at his funeral. She was supposed to say 5 things that she loved about her dad, and she couldn't come up with a single one. So she's kind of thinking about this on the rooftop when a man bursts through the door and is all angry and kicking chairs, and this is where we meet our main male character, Ryle Kincaid. Ryle is a neurosurgeon who's just had a really tough day, and he and Lily kind of kick things off and almost end up in a one-night stand, but he gets called away to work, and she's like, well, I'll never see that guy again. So 6 months pass, and Lily has finally opened up her own flower shop using the inheritance money from her father's death. Well, wouldn't you know, her first employee, her brother is Ryle Kincaid. So they meet again, and they kind of form this tentative relationship. He does not do dating, but he's willing to make an exception because he is just so enamored by Lily. And things are going well. In the meantime, Lily had gone to her childhood home when she was home for the funeral for her father, and she got a box full of her stuff from her room, and in that box had journals from when she was in high school. So while we're in the present, she's setting up her flower shop, getting to know Ryle. We're also doing some flashbacks in the form of her journal. So these flashbacks are to her 15-year-old self in high school. She's reminiscing on her first love, Atlas Corrigan. You know, we're getting to know Ryle, but we're also getting to know this Atlas guy who they ended up parting ways when he graduated high school because he ended up going into the military, and he was like, maybe we'll find each other someday, but don't hold out for me. And that kind of left this hole in her heart that really hasn't closed, ever. Atlas reappears in her life. She and Ryle and her mother go out to eat, and they go to a restaurant where Atlas is working. And things just kind of get messy from there. She's like, hey, I've moved on, I'm with Ryle now, but Ryle kind of finds him to be a thorn in the side. So things change in the relationship with Ryle, and that's where I'll leave this plot summary because it'll become spoilers. But I will go on to say trigger warnings, which could potentially be spoilers. I think a lot of us by this point know the big thing about It Ends With Us is that it's marketed as a romance, but people don't think it should be. So, trigger warnings, domestic violence and domestic abuse, detailed scenes of domestic violence and abuse. Surprise pregnancy, I know people hate that one, surprise pregnancy. Descriptive sexual content, and rape. So those are your trigger warnings. If you're thinking about picking up the book, make sure that you keep those in mind. So moving on to some lighter things. Whenever I finish a book, I always take quotes from it for my book journal. So these are the 3 quotes that I chose. 15 seconds. That's all it takes to completely change everything about a person. The second one is, for better, for worse, fuck that shit. And the last one, it stops here. With me and you, it ends with us. So what were my thoughts on the book? Well, obviously I liked it because I gave it 5 stars. It was a really easy read, which I enjoy easy reads. I love reading fantasy, but with world building, sorry, my cat is rubbing his head on my camera stand, so it's wobbling a bit. So I like to read fantasy, but a lot of times with world building, it takes me longer to digest it, and it takes me longer to read it. But with books like It Ends With Us, it's just very easy to read and understand what's going on. I thought this book was very raw and real. Hoover actually wrote this book based on her mother's relationship with her father. It was a similar situation, although she ended up getting out of it a lot quicker than we see in the book. He wrote this as a personal story, basically. I think we'll be getting into spoilers here, so go ahead and skip if you want. But when Lily first deals with the abuse from Ryle, it feels very much like a real reaction. It's like he hit her and she's like, did that really just happen? Maybe it was just a one-time thing. It feels very, what people would think in that situation. And, she experienced the abuse of her mother from her father growing up. And she's like, that will never be me. And then she's put in that situation. She's like, oh, shit. it's not as easy to leave as I thought. Like, it was kind of tough to read sometimes, but I liked the realness to the situation that it had. So that's my thoughts on it. I thought it was well written to describe the situation. I do not think, personal opinion, people say that they think this book glorifies abuse, and I don't see it. I don't think it does at all. I think it shows the difficulties that people have in leaving abusive relationships, but I did not see it glorifying abuse in any way. That was It Ends With Us. And I actually ended up reading this book because my mom and I saw the movie in August. When we saw the movie, I'm like, well, now I gotta read the book. I gotta know the differences, because, you know, they changed things for the movie, which they did, and I was not happy about it. They made the abuse a lot more vague and subtle in the movie, and it was like, for example, the first time it happens is there's a scene where Ryle is trying to take a burning casserole out of the oven, and he forgets the oven mitts. And in the movie, he goes and grabs it, and he kind of like throws his hand away, like, oh, like it was hot, and Lily was too close. And it looked like, they made it look like an accident of, oh, he hit her in the face because he was recoiling. Which we later find out in the movie that it actually was intentionally him hitting her, not an accidental, like, oh shit, I burned my hand. But like, in the book, it was very clear, because he went to grab it, he burned his hand, and Lily's like tipsy on wine, and she starts laughing like, oh, you idiot, how could you forget the oven mitts? And he comes over angry and is like, and hits her, because he's like, oh, like, fuck you, like, why are you laughing at me? So it was very different in that sense. And I did not like how vague and subtle they made it in the movie. But anyways, that was It Ends With Us. So the next book I read in the month of September was the sequel. It Starts With Us. The genre is romance, and I would say this one is much more romantic than the first book. The book length is 323 pages. It is dual point of view. Each of them is first person. So we have the perspectives of Lily and Atlas from the first book. My rating was 4.5 stars, and my spice rating was 2 peppers. So going into the plot, spoiler, Lily divorced Ryle, as she should, because he was a dick and would not, claimed he would change, and he wasn't. So she left. This book starts off with our main character, Lily Bloom, navigating through her divorce from Ryle, while raising her daughter as a single parent. It's been about 2 years since the end of It Ends With Us, and she runs into Atlas on the street, and she's like, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready for a relationship, I'm ready to move on, and I'm ready to move on with you. They start kind of tentatively going on a couple dates, but there's this constant tension throughout of what is Ryle going to do, because he's been trying to win Lily back. He absolutely hates Atlas. He thinks he's the reason that they divorced, even though the reason they divorced was that he was fucking abusing Lily. There's a constant tension throughout the book, which made it very kind of like nerve-wracking to read. It was kind of like, oh my god, what's Ryle gonna do? Like, is he gonna hurt someone? Like, is he gonna kill someone? You know, you have these thoughts while you're reading. So the other thing that is going on is that Atlas is dealing with a new problem. He's been having a bunch of break-ins at his restaurants, and they are being vandalized, and his mother suddenly reappears in his life. She's been estranged for quite a while because she's not a good person. I really can't go into more of the plot summary without spoiling things. Basically, Lily and Atlas are trying to get back together without pissing off Ryle, / trying to figure out what to do with Ryle, and Atlas is kind of dealing with these break-ins and his mother. So trigger warnings on this one. Recounted domestic violence. There's not really a lot of present-day domestic violence in this one, but there's a lot of recounting events that happened in the first book / in the past. There's recounting of homelessness, and there is child neglect and abandonment. So those are your trigger warnings. The 2 quotes I selected for this one: that shouldn't matter, right? If he treated you like that, why should he get another chance with me? And the second one: Maybe the idea of love ending being a negative thing is simply a matter of perspective. Because to me, the idea that a love came to end means that at some point, there was a love that existed. So my thoughts on this one. 4.5 stars. It didn't hit as hard as the first book. But it was still good. Ryle made me so mad throughout the book. It's like, grow the fuck up, man. Which I'm pretty sure Atlas tells him at one point. Atlas is not the reason your marriage ended. You need to get help. Like, sure, you're some fancy pants neurosurgeon, but like, you can't treat people like shit and fucking hit them and black out when you get mad. Like, that's not good. You gotta get help, man. So that was really annoying, and the constant tension of what's Ryle going to do was bothering me. I think that's why I only gave it 4.5 stars. But otherwise, I love Lily and Atlas together. I loved Atlas, the way he handled the situations with Ryle and his mother, and I thought it was a pretty solid read. Alright, moving on to my third book for September, Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. My mom randomly bought me this book because we're in this group on Facebook called Psychological Thrillers Readers or something like that. And she sent me, someone had posted about this book, and I was like, wow, that sounds good. So when she came to visit me, she was like, surprise! Still Missing by Chevy Stevens is a mystery/thriller. It's 340 pages, single point of view in first person, and I gave it 5 stars, and my spice rating was 2 peppers. There was one consensual open door sex scene, which is where that spice rating came from. This one's a doozy. So, our main character, for plot summary, Annie O'Sullivan, is a 32-year-old realtor who's having a very slow day at her open house. She's getting ready to pack up because she's going to meet her boyfriend for dinner, and she's like, yeah, this was a slow day, whatever, like, I'm just leaving early. And as she's packing up, a man shows up in a van, and he's well-dressed, very nice, and very interested in buying the house. So, she's like, oh, this is my lucky day. This guy wants to buy this house. Let's go. So, she's showing him around for the open house, just the two of them, when he pulls out a gun, holds it up to her back, and is like, you're coming with me. So, yeah, he takes her to his van and he abducts her. So this story is told as therapist sessions or psychiatrist sessions. Annie recounts the year that she spent in captivity in the cabin with this man that she is now calling the Freak. So we know Annie gets away because she's telling the story in therapy sessions with her psychiatrist. So this man takes her to a cabin in the woods, and this cabin's like, there's no escape. The fridge is locked up, all the cabinets are locked up, there's no weapons in sight, the stools in the kitchen are bolted to the floor, the bed is bolted to the floor, there's no lock on the bathroom door, there's no windows. She realizes she's not getting out, and she's not gonna be able to attack this guy. And it seems strange, but he knows, like, she's like, why did he pick me? You know, I don't know this man, and he seems to know all this information about me. He knows her friends' names, he knows, like, where she lives and all this stuff. He's done his research. And she's like, why me? Which is gonna be one of the main points of the book later on. Trying to figure out who this man is and why he abducted her. The Freak who is keeping her in this cabin he's abusive. He has a very short temper and this crazy set of rules, one of which is that she can only use the bathroom 4 times a day. That's it. It's like 4, like, I'm pretty sure they're designated times when she can use the bathroom. It's like, what the fuck? So Annie obviously escapes because she is telling the story to her therapist. But when she gets out, the police are having trouble identifying the man because his body has been decomposing a little bit and his fingerprints are burned off. And so it's like, well, how can we match him in the system if we, you know, don't have the fingerprints and his body's kind of decomposing. So the second half of the book, after she escapes, is dealing with the police investigation of trying to figure out who this man is, why Annie was abducted. And Annie just doesn't feel safe. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't after being stuck in a cabin with a fucking psychopath? So she's dealing with all this trauma behind finally escaping her captor just to not feel safe at home. And I won't say more because that'll be spoilers. Trigger warnings for this book, lots of them. Please heed this warning because this book is very dark and does not have trigger warnings written in the book before you read it, which I don't really have triggers, but it kind of would have been nice to know what was coming up to prepare for it. So trigger warnings, graphic abuse. The freak is an abuser, and there are detailed graphic scenes of him abusing Annie. Rape. Detailed scenes of rape. Infant loss. This one was the hardest one. I do not have kids, but reading about this was really tough. I think I might go through and find the chapter where it happens and know it in the video, so that if you want to read this book and you can't read that specific scene, you can skip that chapter. Torture goes along with the abuse. Those crazy abusive rules like can only go to the bathroom 4 times a day. Kidnapping? That's an obvious one. And blood/gore. So this one's got a lot of trigger warnings. Still, I would highly recommend this book if you can handle those triggers. I only selected one quote from this one, and it's really goofy. So the quote I selected was happening at a very intense scene in the book. Annie's having this breakdown at the police station when she's escaped, and she's kind of freaking out. She's hyperventilating, and this was good comedic relief, and it actually made me laugh out loud. So the the quote is, "My head rested on her huge boobs, which smelled like warm vanilla cookies." I was like, oh, what? My thoughts on this book. The first half was way darker than I was expecting. And I also, for some reason, I was expecting the book to be more about her time in captivity, but it was really only the first half of the book. And then she escapes and is dealing with the aftermath and the investigations and the mystery portion of it. So the first half was really dark. That infant loss caught me completely by surprise, and it was intense to read. But in the second half, with the police investigations, I could not figure out the plot twist, which is, you know, it's one of the things mystery thriller readers do. They're like, oh, I gotta figure out, like, you know, the plot twist before it happens. I don't know if other people are like that, but that's definitely me. And I'm always very satisfied when I cannot figure out the plot twist, because it's always like, oh my god, seriously? But it's also kind of satisfying to figure it out, because then you're like, I was right. But I could not figure out the plot twist on this one, and I was hooked. I could not put this book down. So, Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. Highly recommend. Please heed those trigger warnings if you want to read it. But yeah, it was a good book. Last book for September was The Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent. Also, just first of all, peep these cute Kindle accessories. I got this little dust plug, public library card, and this is the back. I gotta tape down my stickers. Kind of getting some glare there. I gotta tape down my stickers so that they don't shift. But yeah. Yeah, so obviously I read this one ebook. The Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent is a mystery/thriller. It is 256 pages, dual point of view, both in first person. And my rating was 4.5 stars, and my spice rating was none. There is nothing romantic in this book. Going into our plot summary, our first point of view is our main character, Ren, who is a 19-year-old girl. She's living in isolation in the woods with her mother and her 2 younger sisters, Sage and Evie. So these girls and their mother, they live off the grid like they're in the 1800s. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water. They have to pump their water. And they're like raising their own cattle and stuff. It's interesting. The girls have never left the cabin or the clearing in their woods. Only their mother leaves, and she tells them, she weaves these stories about how the outside world is dangerous and it's riddled with disease and destruction, and there's not even a president anymore, and she's kind of scared them into, you're never leaving this cabin because it's a fucked up world out there. But eventually, one day Evie gets sick, and their mother leaves with Evie to go to town to get help for her because it's not a sickness that can be treated at home. It's been 2 months and they haven't come back. And Sage and Wren are going into winter. Their livestock are dying and they are running out of food and they're going to starve to death. It's a certainty at this point. So while we're kind of setting up the scene, you know, they're dying. Their mama's not coming back. One day, a man comes to their door and knocks. The girls are terrified. No one should know where this cabin is. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're not supposed to answer the door as strangers, and they've never even seen a man before. So this strange man, he gets in, and he doesn't seem like he's going to hurt the girls, but they think he is. So he's kind of like a slimy guy who's been like clearly hiking in the wilderness, and you know, he's a little low on supplies, and he's like, well, I'm gonna catch up here in your cabin where it's, you know, nice and warm, protected from the elements. And the girls are like, oh. And he says, I'm taking you with me when I leave. And the girls are like, oh shit, like, what's he gonna do with us? So the night before he's gonna take them to leave, the girls end up escaping, and they're booking it through the woods, when one day they come upon the doorstep of a stranger and decide to ask for help. Our second point of view is a woman named Nicolette who wants to have a child with her famous photographer husband Brant, but she is unable to because she had to have an emergency hysterectomy. So now they're trying to become foster parents, but their marriage is also crumbling. She one day found a photo of a child in his sock drawer that looked exactly like him, and she's 100% convinced that he has cheated on her with another woman and had a child in secret. That's most of her point of view until one day, 2 girls knock on her door asking for help. And that's where the 2 stories collide, and that's where I'll leave the plot summary. Trigger warnings on this one. There's talk of infertility. There's kidnapping. And there's animal death. Just like 1 or 2 in the beginning. It's not very detailed, but yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't write down my quote for this one. Well, hold on. The one quote, I only picked one for this one. It's a strange little family we make, but for the first time in my life, I'm home. So I just thought that was a nice little quote. My thoughts on this one, very easy read. I got through it in 4 days. I was kind of cleaning my house, and whenever I wanted to take a break, I'd pick up the book, and I just was flying through it. But I'm like, you know, can't ignore your responsibilities and read this book in a day. So 4 days, but it was very easy to read. I was pretty hooked on it, as I usually am with mysteries, thrillers, because I gotta know who done it. I did think it was a little predictable. I did predict some of the twists that were coming. I don't think I fully predicted the main twist, but it wasn't like, oh my god, that was crazy. It was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And my gripe was that Nicolette was so annoying. The miscommunication trope is so annoying to me. Like, talk to your freaking significant other. It's gonna clear up shit. But she refused to talk to her husband because she was trying to find irrefutable evidence, because she was worried that once she brought something up, he would go delete all the evidence and tell her no. So that was pretty annoying. But yeah, so those were the 4 books I read in the month of September. Now I'm moving on. I'll probably only have 2 books for an October wrap up, which I guess I don't need hour-long videos like some of these booktubers. Plus it's their job and not my job. But I am currently reading Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I decided to do the tandem read, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm about 15 to 17% through both of the books, and I am just... I love the switching off. I don't mind Kayal, or... Is it pronounced Nisreen? Or Nazrin? I think I've seen Nisreen because she's... I don't know. Nisreen and Irene's point of views. Irene is a lovely character. And of course I'm loving all the characters' point of views in Empire of Storms. But I will hopefully finish those in the month of October and film another reading wrap-up. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you might have found some recommendations from this video. And I'll see you guys next time.